Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk. I don't know. I don't know what to talk about today, actually. So I just want to be. I think I started to change a little bit. So what I think about myself is now that I want to speak more freely and without agenda. I think so, which is very interesting because I'm very much a planner. I'm very much, you know, have planned for everything, but as I go through this journey, I feel like, you know, I should be who I am. I should be whoever am I, you know, whatever am I or whoever am I. And this is very much lead to philosophical questions to me, as it was to the world, you know, that we as a human being constantly change, and it's quite interesting how it be, how we handle that change and how we project that into the world, and how sometimes people have this kind of soul or embarrassment of their self in some way, that it has something that you couldn't imagine as yourself. I think because it's quite, I think it's very much, for me, it's the transformation that I had for myself is big, and it's quite magical in some ways, because I never expect this to happen, and it's quite amazing how it happened in my world. So now I just speak freely. So the thing about it is the fact that, you know, probably I'm quite curious how the world thinks and how it is really played out in some ways. Well, anyway, so the thing is, I just want to contribute to the world itself. So the thing about myself is, I don't know, man. Probably no. Probably I don't want to contribute myself. Probably I contribute this to the world or some ways, or not contribute this to something else. So I don't know, man. It's quite absurd in some ways, you know? Because the thing about self is hypothesized. It's very subjective, and it's very varied in some ways. So you can't really go through what is yourself and what. The thing about self, okay, for example, self is like these dots that you have to pursue or to have to achieve, but it's not this dot, right? It's about when you are on this dot, you think that you are the other dots, or you can be the other dots. So it's about possibilities of self, right? So I think that's weird, and it's quite interesting in some ways, because if then like that, what is self in some ways? Well, we can identify probably its possibilities of self. Is it nature? Probably you've been born to have certain amount of skills or certain amount of identity, but it's not really, you know, it's not really about that. It's about something that we have to live with it. It's something that we have to take on, and something that ourselves is very hard to identify in some way. It's very hard because it's probably unidentified, and it's probably weird, and have to analyze it yourself in some ways. But I think there is self. For me, there is self. For myself, for my subjective view of void, I think there is self. There's called self, and indeed, it's the hard thing that we have to achieve. But self itself, it's infinity. Self itself is changes. Self itself self itself it's continuum of the self of the future itself. So it's possibilities of infinities. Yeah, so it's infinity. And then it's about this concept of self that I think it's quite interesting also, is the fact that it's how it's flexible in some ways, because the thing is it can't quite make logically, it can't be it can't be flexible. It has to be some kind of like sign or some kind of like dots to start with, because every thing or things should start on a point, right? I think that's the thing. I think it should start on a point, then you can make a thing. And if it's not a point, or even it's not really anything, like really like a scratch or even like anything, some actions to do with it, I think it's quite not how we thought it would be, man. It's not really what's making it as a point of view, or as a something to rely on, or as a something to count on, as a accurate and as true. And I think the thing about it is the fact that it has to be true, indeed to have that kind of like belief, or not belief, actually it's a philosophy that you have to have in order to achieve that goal, a certain goal, right? And it's somewhat, you don't have to have a point. If you just like don't have a point, then it should be like just nothing, and nothing is worse, than a starting point. And it's quite weird how people sometimes, I think people are sometimes believe in nothing, which is, yeah, I think it's quite logical in some ways, but it's not. But are you not tired of it? I don't know, man. Are you not tired of it? Are you not making yourself quite a little bit? Are you not lazy of it? That's my question probably to that who's believe in nothing. But the thing is, probably it's quite logical, because I think there's some sense, but I see itself as a point where, you have to have that point in order to have that ending in some ways. And if you don't start at all of that, it's quite absurd, and it can be everything, and it can't be structured in some ways, and it can't be in sense of embarkment of things that you have to have in way of making it as a true, because true is something that you have to think on, and true is something that you have to believe on to, and something that you have to get a grip on it. And I don't think that nothing has something to grip on it. It's just a felt of an empty air that we have to, just breathe it in. And well, it's quite good, because it has you this kind of like a fun enjoying life, right? Because it's quite absurd, and it's quite meaningless, and it's quite something that are in fact YOLO kind of thing, it's quite like that, I think. And it's fun, and it's interesting, but it's not, I think you have to look at that in the other side. I think you have to look both sides in some ways if you think that way. I think the thing about nothingness, it's the fact that it's quite, I'm not trying to be prejudiced about it, I'm trying to, you know, open my mind as wide as possible. But the problem with nothingness is something that it's nothing, man. It's really like you're nothing, you know. It's like you just don't feel like you are someone else, that you have to have your potential self. You know, it's not, you're not going somewhere, you're just staying there. You're just like staying there until you're dead, man. And it's not good, I think. And it's not a way to tell a person that it's not good, but it's not. But come on, man, go, okay, go everywhere, man. Anywhere. I mean, not everywhere, going anywhere where you like. And I think it's quite important to someone to go anywhere they like, and which it provides them in some ways are the thing that they hold on to, and they have to have that kind of attitude to themselves in some ways. Because the thing about people is somewhat they are quite a grip and quite have that kind of like beliefments of themselves, and they're made to have that path, right? It's quite obvious, because the thing about for example, educational system did that. Of course, they have streaming, and they have this major, right, in college and university. And the thing about it is the fact that it's specified. So we specified, that's what we are, a specific people, which is, for example, you become engineer, or you become businessman, you become, you know, anything, accountant. So you stream that into something, but then out of the world you're not really specified. You know, I think the educational itself, I believe that. I believe Marxism theory about education, which is very much controlled by the bourgeoisie, which is, I think it's quite good, and I think it's quite amazing how Marxism analyzes that, and I think it's true in some ways. Because the thing about it is the fact that it's not really what we're not really streaming. You know, we don't stream. You know, we don't stream. We just have this. We have to have that intelligence of ourselves, which is that the educational itself did not teach you to be smart. They teach you to be specified. They teach you to be specific. They teach you to be accurate on the way they think they are, or they think that you should to be. You know, the thing about it's quite personal. It's quite subjective how the teacher teach us. I think that's the thing about the educational system. It's quite subjective how the teacher really teach a student, and how subjective is it is. Like, for example, you study on university, right? And you study for example, electrical engineer, and this teacher or this professor told you that you have to do this and this and that, and it's quite subjective. Because, well, every time I hear that as, alright, for example, I did that and it's not quite working for me, and it's not quite making sense in some ways. Because the thing about it is the fact that process is very much personal, and process itself is personal. So I think that's what you don't have to teach person to, which is it's personal, and it's quite crooked. You know, you don't teach. Well, probably people do that on subjective manner. You know, subjective manner. I think all people are subjective in some ways. I don't think we are working on an objective things that onto the world. But I think the most subjective people are the most objective, because the thing about it is the fact that you are willingly to have that subjectivity to point out to something, you know, to point out to something that you want to be, which is our that light, or even not that light, or the light that you want. Probably that's the best thing, the light that you want. And the thing that is, it is the fact that it's quite generous how people are making any decisions, and not really generous, but it's quite how he think or they think that it's point out in some ways to make it in a way to build it upon the educational system itself. For example, educational system, the thing about subjective viewpoint is somewhat, it should be not dictated, it should be shared among us. It's not really, you have to follow the process of my brain is working. So that's I think that's what educational system doing, and I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. And I think it's supposed to be that this is the end goal, and then this is the end goal, and then this is what I was doing, and then this is the other person that was doing, and then this is the other person, and the other person was doing, the other famous person. Or for example, like the thing that, for example, electrical engineer, so you have to study about scientists, right? You have to study about the theory of scientists. You have to study a book of probably, I don't know, science. Still you have to study about Albert Einstein, or probably about forgot. Albert Einstein, Albert Einstein, and Graham Bell, Graham Bell. Well, you have to study about that, so you don't have to study about the thing that your teacher is doing, is telling you, because it's quite interesting how teacher is. Because I think the best teacher is the way that they have something on their sleeves. I think that's the best teacher. And something that they don't have on their sleeve is not really teacher at all. I think it's quite just dictatorship, or even like they don't have that kind of like embargement, or even have that self. And because I think teacher is not only as a teacher itself, but as an example of also, because teachers, because man, it's, if you don't see your teacher as an example, I don't think that it's quite to be like that, man. It doesn't have to be like that, man. It's not what you have to do, man. It's not what you have to do to have on a respective manner of teacher itself. So that's what I did basically. Actually, I did personal teaching skills. Well, I have this kind of like critics on teaching, because sometimes teachers are not really clear what he or she about to say. But I think teaching is quite quite an amazing job, because teaching itself, it really teach another, or even like, I think the most lesson that the teacher learned is that they learned more than the student itself. So I think that's what subjective view of the teacher itself. But it's quite interesting how the teacher itself is not really affecting some students, because the thing about it is the fact that you have to think about the majority of the student itself. But what about the minority of the student itself? It's not quite interesting how you think that it's not important, because it is important. So the thing is, I think You have to have this, not really, I don't think that it has to be, I think it has to be some kind of like specifics, or so I think I want to change people point of view of someone that are crooked or that are rare in some ways, in thinking that it's not really, you know, that it's not really sick, you know, because they are amazing and they are have this kind of like embarkment, and they have this kind of like speciality, and you don't think that it's a sickness, you know, it's not really a sickness, man. It's quite the contradictory, it's quite the amazement that you have to see that the other kid is doing, because they are amazing and they are have this kind of like amazing attitude upon themselves, and amazing attitude upon the world. And I think that's the thing about the world itself. They judge you, and the world itself can't be judged anymore, man. I think we have to have that attitude of perceiving, and we have to have that attitude of to look at the world as wide as it is, and to have to look the world as not narrow and narrow-minded as it is. You know, you have to be open to new things, and you have to be open as it's something that you are believed in some ways. So I think that's it for today. I'm happy to talk this about this to you. I think it's quite filling up my mind a lot in these days, and I don't think that I can put it out, but today I think I can put it out to the world that it is time for change. I think it is time to have that perception on the world, to have that, to look not like this but this, to look at perceiving ways, you know, to look at is it like something that you have to have gripped on it. And it's quite interesting how the world is today, and how the world is nowadays actually, and it's quite interesting how the world is now, and it's quite many, and it's quite wide the world is. We have to have that attitude of not judging but more perceiving, and more open-minded to the world, and open-minded to ideas and thoughts, and something that are not in your realm of being, or in your circle of brain. You have to go outside of it, and in terms of it, and you will see how amazed are you to have that, instead of just keeping it inside your head. I think it's quite amazing how the world works in some ways, because the thing about it is the fact that you have to go outside, man. You have to experience the world in some ways, and of course you have to have goal, but man, to have goal is something else different if you don't have that attitude themselves. So first thing first, you have to have that attitude of open-mindedness. How miracle the world is, and how it's going to have impact on us if we think that way, and it's really magical in some way, and it's quite amazing how the world works in some ways, and it's quite amazing how the world reacts to us, and it's amazing, you know. And the thing about it is the fact that we have to have that perception of mind, I think, in some way, to look at the world, to have that in our under our slaves, or probably under our slaves, probably, you know, to have that to continue life, to have that to persuade life in a more meaningful way, I think. And I think I really am happy to talk about this, and you know, I really am happy to open up to myself and to the world itself to have that, in a way, to make it as a gratitude that I live in this world. And it's amazing how the world works, it's really amazing. And I think I quite felt like it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. I don't know how it works, but it's quite amazing. So thank you for watching, and click subscribe. First of all, click like button if you like my video, and click subscribe if you want to stay up to date to my channel, and click the notification button, which is important if you want to stay up to date. So thank you very much, and see you next time.